Hey, Eastern Oregon, welcome to this March 14th version of AM Live on EOA, your connection to Eastern Oregon. It's a cold morning out there this morning.
We're on Roku.
And we're also on Roku.
Somebody messaged and asked how to get the app on Roku, so I'll tell everybody again. On your Roku TV in the search bar, type in EOA Live. Our logo will come up as one of the apps. Click on it, download it, and then you'll have, when you open it, whatever's live, and then our rolling playlist will play, and then you'll have on demand down below.
Yep.
It's Pi Day, too. It's National Pi Day.
I know.
March 14th, 3.14.
So Briar Whitty's nickname is Pi. So happy Pi Day, Pi.
Why is his nickname Pi? She destroyed pies?
She's, I don't know. No, she just, like, I don't know. It was a nickname that she got when she was little. Pi.
Trying to think of my kids' nicknames. My youngest is JoJo. We call her JoJo. My middle Kai is Bubba. And then my oldest Presley is Miss P. Or Sweet Pea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that weird how your kids just have a nickname? I didn't have a nickname when I was a kid.
You didn't?
No, not until I played baseball, and then everybody called me Doddsy, and then that just
But before that, you didn't have a nickname?
No.
So I think people called me Clappy. People called me Happy Clappy when I was a kid. And then when I was a little older, they called me Brentley. I still have some people that call me Brentley. It's kind of funny.
No, I don't have any.
And BC.
So yeah, that's the easiest.
Yeah.
That's the easiest by far.
Yeah.
There's nothing real significant about Pi Day except for what was it? 2015, the significant year because it all matched.
Oh.
3.1415. 31415. Yeah, 31415. I know somebody that can do it all the way up to like 900.
Really?
Yeah, decibels.
Or
decibels. 900 decimals. That's a lot to remember. Pointless information because nobody does math. So I was telling TJ this last night at the card room. Nobody does math with pi on paper. You can't.
Right.
You do it on a calculator.
And I'm trying to think. Isn't the calculation? How is that? It's the relationship between the diameter.
It's to get the circumference of a circle.
But I mean, I think you take the diameter and
pi
square root it. Do you remember?
Pi r squared.
Pi r squared.
That's
radius.
Right.
It's radius. Yeah.
Right. Oh, it's radius. Okay. Yep.
That gives you circumference or area?
That gives you area.
Area. Pi r squared. Yeah, who cares? Like I'm never going to use that in my entire life. Not even one time. It's like, like the Pythagorean theorem: a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Right? Who is going to use that in real life besides an engineer or like a?
No, but it's funny because I have used that one.
For what? When did you need to know that
Because if you have a rectangle, it's not a rectangle
though.
Hold on a second.
Got you.
Or if you have a square, okay, and you want to know that it is square, let's say you're doing. When I used it, I was doing a volleyball court. It was several years ago, and half of volleyball court it's 2 squares, okay.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have, if you have a large area, it's hard to know whether these 2 lines are at an exact right angle or not. Well, the one way you can determine whether it's at a right angle is knowing that the distance of that diagonal.
Pythagorean theorem is a triangle. It has nothing to do with a square.
Right. But a square is made of 2 triangles,
That's
right angle triangles.
That's true.
Yeah. So anyhow.
Yeah, I've never.
Yeah, but no, you're right. In real life, people are not going to use that.
No, I like the meme that says, "Why not teach people how to do their taxes instead of teaching them how to find the circumference of a circle?"
I know it's kind of funny. You've probably seen who's the big they advertised during the Super Bowl, and their big slogan was, "Don't do your taxes. Let us do it."
TurboTax?
TurboTax. Yeah. So they've gone from a software company or from to where now they've
No, they don't
hired
want to do it.
thousands and thousands of accountants, I
Yeah.
would imagine.
Or if only they taught high school kids how to do their own taxes, then you wouldn't have to work. Then you wouldn't have to pay somebody.
But it's so complicated. I mean, I'm telling you, it's like, we probably could do our own home taxes, but
Algebra's
It costs money.
complicated too.
No.
You could do a
It's
whole
not-
class on taxes.
well, right. But taxes is not just math. It's
No, I know.
knowing
Yeah,
all the
I know. But you
loopholes,
could do if you did a whole class, just get rid of like geometry or or algebra 2 and just did taxes.
Mhm.
Like make it even elective.
Yeah.
And you did a whole semester, you would know just as much about taxes as most people.
Yeah, as long as the rules didn't change and everything was the same going forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you would be up to date
that's
at
the
that
complicated.
time.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with you.
I just don't I don't get some of the stuff we do in schools. Like I really don't. Like we teach like there's certain things that are just pointless now that we're still teaching kids. It's like, come on, let's
Yeah.
progress a little
Move
bit.
past that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, you want to do sports?
Let's do it.
All right.
Gonna be a quick sports show today. We're kind of in that dead zone right now in between seasons. But EOU softball was in Vancouver, British Columbia this weekend. They got the first one. They lost the next two. They didn't play the fourth game because of weather, but that's how the CCC works. The first three are conference games, and the last one doesn't count. So they went 1 and 2 this weekend. They have a doubleheader here Friday and Saturday against Bushnell. Hopefully the weather holds up so we can get a home game finally. We were supposed to play Southern a couple weeks ago here, and that got moved to Hermiston. So depending upon the weather, it could happen again. EOU baseball was in Caldwell this weekend. They lost all 4 to the Yotes. They're having a tough time right now, and hopefully they can get the wheels turning this weekend. They have a doubleheader at home on Saturday and Sunday against OIT, weather permitting, which they have a better chance of playing than the women because they're on a turf field and the women aren't. The EOU plays down at Optimist until they can get their stadium built. Men's and women's track and field are in Nampa, Idaho this weekend at Northwest Nazarene at the Yote Ice Break Invitational. So it's like the kickoff to spring outdoor track and field this weekend in Nampa. LeGrand High School spring sports schedules are out. If you want to see them, you can go to LeGrand High School Athletics /activities on Facebook. They posted them, I believe, yesterday. So the tentative schedules, they change all the time. So if you want to check them out, go ahead and go there and check them out.
All righty.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, let's take a look outside. It's one of those cold, frosty
Half an inch ice on my windshield this morning.
mornings. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like hard ice too. It was like
Yeah. Let's see what Gabe has.
The European model brings dry conditions for most to start out your Tuesday before that steady moisture moves south to north during the afternoon and evening, bringing widespread moisture across eastern Oregon after sunset in a mix of rain and snow. Heading into the day on Tuesday for LeGrand, it looks like this will start out into the upper 20s at the 8 o'clock hour. Dry conditions, more clouds and sun, but overall that's your best shot at those sun breaks before those clouds thicken up into the noon hour, bringing the first chance to maybe see a few snowflakes around, but overall much of us will remain dry until the late afternoon hours as those highs rise right into the low 40s. So once you get towards the 4 o'clock hour, that's when we could start to see maybe some passing rain at times, but there'll definitely be some pockets mixing with snow and graupel before we see a slight westerly component into the evening, bringing steady, widespread snow once you get towards the 8 o'clock hour. And after that, through about midnight, that's when you're going to see those snow accumulations. That 7-day forecast sponsored by Valley Insurance shows those early morning numbers for your Tuesday, generally into the mid to the upper 20s, with the exception for that cold spot 18 in Meacham, that warm spot 37 in Ontario. Afternoon highs, much of us topping into the upper 30s to low 40s, with the exception for those warmer spots right around 50 out towards Ontario. and Pendleton. Once you progress throughout the evening hours through about midnight, that total snowfall expected somewhere between a dusting to 6 inches across our mountainous valleys and passes. That low end would actually be out towards Meacham, where you see that moisture last. That high end would be out towards Burns, where you see that moisture first, with the rest of our mountainous valleys and passes somewhere in between. But our lowest elevations of eastern Oregon will not see any snow. Pendleton, Ontario will just be dealing with rain, although that may change into early Wednesday morning as those temperatures out that way could get closer to freezing. So maybe the low elevations of eastern Oregon maybe wakes up to a dusting in areas. Otherwise, the rest of us will be seeing an additional dusting to 3 inches into early Wednesday before we just turn dry, more sunshine working its way in. In fact, most amount of sunshine this week, Thursday and Friday. Both days are guaranteed to be completely dry as those temperatures gradually warm up throughout the remainder of the week. More cloud cover expected for the weekend, especially on Sunday, meaning actually any one of those days could see a slight chance for a few snowflakes or raindrops, but much of us will remain dry until early next week. That's when I'm expecting more organized showers to move back in.
All righty. Man, there's a lot of numbers on that screen.
I just I get I just focus on LeGrand.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just highlight that in my head.
Yeah, we appreciate Valley Insurance for sponsoring the weather. If you don't know, they recently moved from not from Jefferson, Washington. They were on Washington Street, and now they're downtown LeGrand in the old Umpqua building. That building has been a bank in one manner or another
For a long time.
Yeah.
We have 2 insurance companies moving into banks.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah. Reed and Associates are
Moving next
going to
door.
be our big neighbors down here. Yeah, that's a beautiful building. Both of those buildings. Well, I guess the building downtown it's been remodeled recently, but this one is new. I mean, this building's.
I haven't been in there, but Kevin told me that they're redoing the floor. The floors are all redone. So what insurance? They're gonna have a drive-up window. You can just drive up and have a little insurance.
Yeah,
that's odd. It's a bank building with an insurance company in it.
yeah. It's funny because they had their deposit. What do they call the security safety deposit boxes?
Yeah.
And I mean, I walked through the building when it was still vacant and was with a guy, and he said, yeah, whoever buys this building is probably not going to be a bank. And if you know someone who wants some boxes, security deposit boxes, really unique. Anyhow, they were sitting out here on the sidewalk, and I know ended up just in recycling. And it's like, I don't know. I kept scratching my head. It's like super cool for someone, but I don't know. Did you ever say? I mean, they're like little teeny mailboxes.
Yeah, when you rent one from a bank.
Yeah, yeah. Some people
security
never even
deposit
seen
box.
that. Yeah, but
You put your like jewels and your coins and
right. Yeah,
they're
but
popular with mafia, because they don't want to have all their stuff at their house when the FBI comes.
well, and I drove by and I thought, oh man, I'd be sure because they had some bigger ones, and without the doors, they would be, hold different types of paper or whatever the case might be, except that it was made out of steel. And so it's like, it was a funny little problem to have. What do old banks do with?
I've watched a
their
couple of
safety
YouTube
deposit
creators
box?
that buy safes and ATM machines and safety deposit boxes that don't have keys,
Uh-huh.
and they tear them apart to see what's inside. That would be kind of fun. That'd be a fun job. Easter.
One of my odd jobs along the way was servicing ATM machines in a bank.
Really?
Yeah, it was very. Yeah, it was
Like putting money in them?
Yeah, it was. Well, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. They had bank people that put the money in, but if the money jammed or something, or if the receipt thing needed another
Paper.
roll or whatever it might. And these were in the days when you had a beeper, and so
I had a beeper.
yeah,
At one time.
and I'd get a fault, and it's like that number meant that there's something wrong with that. It was here in town. So
My freshman year in college, I had a pager. Cell phones were just like too expensive at the time. You know, what I
yeah,
mean? My grandpa had one of those cell phones in the bag, you know, that
Yeah.
went in the car, and it cost like $5 a minute to talk on it. So
Yeah.
if you touched it, he would freak. You know what I mean? Like, you're not allowed to call anybody on that thing. And then my very first phone was, I didn't have a Nokia. I had one of those Motorola flips with the antenna
Yeah.
that came out of it. Yeah, and then a Nokia.
yeah.
But I had a beeper for a while. You know, your friends can type you hello or.
You know, so when I was in high school, my parents, we had a landscaping business, you know, and the beeper that I had, this was the first beepers was you just get a number, and
That
then
was
there
the one I had.
and then there was one of the advanced was the beeper would go off, and then there would be a one-way message that
Yeah,
would come through.
I
you know.
remember those.
Yeah. And so, and this particular morning, I was 18. I was a senior in high school, and I had, on the way out the door, I'd had an argument with my mom in some manner, you know, and so, and it's on a weekend, it's on a Saturday, so I was working and was standing there with a client, and the thing goes off, beep, you know, and of course, then the conversation stops, and mom's voice comes like, "Brent, I just want you to know that I love you in spite of our conversation this morning."
Oh God. That's not-
Yeah, and I didn't know what else to say, but it ended. I looked up at the guy like, yeah, it was my mom. So,
Yeah.
one of those funny
There,
mom
there
stories.
was a movie that came out like right when cell phones like were starting to get popular,
Yeah,
and the two guys are sitting right next to each other. The guy pulls out his like, oh, you know, like this at this time it was the clunky cell phone,
Yeah.
you know, and you see him go like this, and the other guy pulls his pager out, looks at it, pulls his cell phone out, calls him back. The other guy answers. He goes, "You ready to roll?" Let's roll. I don't remember what movie it was, but
Man, when I was an elementary kid, my uncle sold car phones. That was way early.
yeah, that's what I was talking about in the bag. I mean, that was basically
Well,
the
this
car
was
phone,
even
right?
this was I mean this was the time where it's like it was like a computer that they had to put in the trunk.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so this was and it was a phone, and the horn would honk. That was the other thing was interesting.
Huh.
That's how you would know. So he'd be sitting in the house and the horn would honk. And
Weird.
he's like, I'm getting a call.
This phone that my grandpa had in the bag was this big.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a leather bag that was like sat in the middle console, and,
Yeah.
and it had like the.
Yeah, that was kind of the next generation.
It was,
Yeah.
it was like you look at it now and you're like, did we really use those? Like, and
Yeah.
pay $5 a minute?
Yeah.
Or,
Well, have you seen any of those YouTube videos where they'll put a rotary phone out on a desk and they'll ask a teenager, today's teenager, like, how would you make a call with this
yeah, and
device?
they're
And
like,
they have,
no idea.
isn't it funny? Okay. All this,
The old house phone, the good old house phone.
the good old house phone. Yep. Well, this morning we have Steve Clements, who is the retired LeGrand mayor, with us. And Steve is always a great conversationalist, and he's going to be with us here in just a minute. All right. So you were saying pi r squared.
Pi r squared. Back to one of your elements,
Yeah.
the topics this morning. Pi r squared is the area the area of a circle.
Right.
And in forestry, you take a tree and you imagine if you're just looking at
To
the
the
surface of the
slice, yeah.
stump, and you get that area, and then you can add that up over the acre, and you get an idea how stocked that acre is.
Interesting.
And they'll thin, so you go into a stand of trees and you estimate how much square feet is, and then you'll say, okay, it's 200. We're going to thin it down to 100. So it means you're going to take about half the trees out.
Well,
And in fact, in forestry, I calibrated my thumb
really?
to be.
So if you hold it straight out.
Yeah, so I held my thumb straight out and turn a circle. I can give you an idea how much square feet of basal area there is on it.
Well, I don't think that nobody used it. My point was it's useless to teach 100% of
Yeah.
the population something that 1% is going to use.
Yeah, it's really kind of professionally oriented,
Right.
I-
100%.
yeah, I mean, and some kids are going to be carpenters, and they're going to need to know the Pythagorean theory because they're going to need to know that they've
Yeah,
got a
that's what
square.
yeah.
And some kids are going to be chemists, so they're going to need to know some of this stuff. But there's a bunch of kids out there who I think could really benefit from knowing how to do taxes
Oh,
or
so
or
much.
balancing a checkbook or and that's what they're gonna need.
I'd
So-
like to see us lean a little more towards like other countries when it comes to schooling. Like around 8th or 9th grade, you kind of have an idea what you want to do. Start doing specialized things that are going to help you get to that point instead of doing general ed all the way through high school. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Or you get a sense of what the kid likes.
Yeah, exactly.
And
which
and you let them study along those lines.
I agree. I would love to see that in schools.
Well, and that is a part in other cultures outside of the United States. I mean, there is very much you're going to be a tradesperson, or I mean, you know that early on.
Early on, like in China, they know it like 8 years old or something.
Yeah.
Like you're studying this and you're going that way.
Yeah, I mean, the downside of that is, what happens if someone wants to be outside of that cap?
Yeah,
I
you're
mean,
going to lock them in, unfortunately.
right, yeah. I mean, that's kind of where that some of those cultures go too far, where it's like, well, if your dad was a tradesman, if your dad or your grandpa was a tradesman, you really have no other choice.
Right.
To get
Well,
out.
I don't.
No,
think we
no,
should
no,
do
no.
that
But I
here.
mean, it's a hard balance.
I think the system we have here in the U.S. is like we give everybody this sort of this bucket of stuff to learn, and then we let them decide what to do with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes the bucket is so deep that there's a lot of stuff that people don't drink from it.
Yeah.
And but then they still have a choice. I remain a strong advocate of a good education.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
it gives you the flexibility to be anything that you want to be.
Yeah.
And to change as
At
you're
least
going
you have
through
the
life.
tools in your kit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But if you say freshman year, if you would have gave me the opportunity to, instead of say, I hate history. I hate it. I think it's pointless. I don't care what happened. Really, you could have overloaded me with math, and I would have loved. You know what I mean? I would have loved that. You know what I mean? But like, there's just certain things that like you don't need in my eyes. Like
Yeah.
if you're not ever planning on being a writer, why the heck do I need to know how to write a research paper?
Yeah.
Like, what good is that going to do for me?
Well, and I agree. And I was certainly there in that time. But now when I write an email or I write any kind of a communication, I'm always thinking like topic sentence, point 1, point 2. I mean, I'm thinking of the formation of a paragraph that I learned in basic
Yeah.
English. Yeah.
And how many-
and I took college English.
Yeah.
All three.
and
classes
how
that they
and
have.
how many initial interactions do you have with people that are very often in writing?
Yeah.
And if you write well and you communicate well in that first instance, there's an instant connection made.
Yeah.
Particularly if it's sort of professional or semi-professional. It helps. I mean, even if you've got to write a letter to the insurance company, you're talking about insurance company, and you got to ask a particular question.
Yeah.
If you write it pretty well, they'll know what you want. If you don't, you could be in duck soup and your premiums go up.
You
Right?
know what's funny is you mentioned history. I was that kid. I had no interest in history, but now, like, I'll sit and watch History Channel for hours and hours and hours because how America was made or how
Oh,
this
yeah.
country was made. Or
Kyle?
do you have any interest in that?
Oh,
No, not
No.
really.
Yeah.
So Kyle, absolutely. I hated history. I mumbled and bumbled my way through high school history. 3 years ago, cleaning out my mother-in-law's place, I found a book on Teddy Roosevelt and Benjamin Franklin. And I thought, oh, this looks kind of interesting. I like to read. That was it. I have read nothing but history for the last 3 or 4 years.
Oh.
And I've gone through, I've read a ton of stuff about the Constitution, how it was created, and how the Pilgrims came. Now I'm into the early 1900s, and it's got me so interested in history that I'm doing a little research on my own.
I don't mind biographies. Like a biography about a person is different than, like, to me, than like sitting there reading about how the Pilgrims came here. Like, I don't care.
Actually, it's really funny to see how they came here, because they, I always thought, oh yeah, they got on a boat in England and they just came here. Well, no, this whole group of people went to Sweden first and hung out there because they were seeking religious freedom and they could get it. And then once they got there, they kind of figured out a way to get money together. It wasn't cheap to get across the ocean at that time, because they had to charter boats. And finally they got the money, and then they went back to England and they sailed across. And they really weren't heading for Massachusetts. They were heading for someplace south. And they ended up on Cape Cod.
I know, they really, and I saw that recently too in something I was watching. They were headed they wanted to go to New York.
Yeah.
To Manhattan, whatever that.
Yeah, the New Amsterdam, where the Dutch were hanging out. Right.
But they were caught in a storm or something.
Yeah, they got blown off course.
They ended up in Massachusetts.
Yeah, on Cape Cod. And then the rest of it is sort of history.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
So do you think that your interest in history has changed with age? I mean, is it an age-related thing? Do you think? I mean, I'm thinking it is for me.
I think so, and it's like I always heard when I was growing up, history repeats itself, and if you and Kyle was talking about, biographies, and biographies are cool because you start to hear about Washington and Adams and Jefferson and Hamilton, and you go, whoa, who we kind of know what these people are. But I didn't get interested in it till I got older, because I wanted to see what this was all about. I mean, how did we get here to be this country, and who were these people that helped form what we are? I mean, Washington, I was saying, oh yeah, George Washington. Well, he never chopped down a cherry tree.
Yeah, but
he was an honest, hardworking guy that put himself forward. And the reason he was the first president is that people trusted him. Yeah. And he was the best known person in all of the colonies because he had led the Continental Army.
Yeah.
And to me, those things, I mean, I didn't think about them when I was young. And then I picked it up and I'm just digging it. And you know what? History does repeat itself because people haven't changed in 1,000 years.
There is one history that I do care about, sports history.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, I know sports history, but I like the whole, like I just never got into like the whole, I don't want to learn. I don't care. I like music history too. I'll take that back because I'm a huge music dude. And so I took a class in college. It was an elective called the History of Music. And it started like 1850 through current. And that was cool. But I mean, like, I don't really care what the Pilgrims.
But some of that stuff fits in. I mean, I mean, going back now and reading about the history of music would make so much more sense because I have this chronology of things that happened when and why.
Yeah.
I just got through reading about Woodrow Wilson. I'm sorry. I mean, he was certainly in the thick of things when it came to World War I, but boy, was he wasn't a very nice guy.
Look, I want to take a quick break. We need to adjust your microphone.
Okay.
We'll be right back. All right, we're back. So I think that, I mean, the thing that's the most interesting about history for me is history that I can remember. You know what I mean? Tanya and I watched a movie the other day called The Jesus Music. It's on Hulu. And I mean, I grew up in the church and grew up when Christian music was kind of in it. And there's a movie in the theater right now called The Jesus Revolution or whatever it might be. And people are really, Kelsey Grammer was one of the main actors in that. And anyhow, but it was, what was fascinating about the history of that music was I remembered all those artists, you know, I mean, and many of them are still alive. And so when history, you know, and my grandfather was born in 1903. He was a bootlegger, you know, and so then when I watch shows or whatever, or read books, I don't read many books, but when I see stuff on the early 1900s, I relate it to him. I think about, oh, well, how old was he in 1920? How old was he in, you know? And that's the kind of stuff that really means something to me.
The more I think about this, the more I kind of do a little bit care about history, because I know W.E.B. Griffin, he's an author, and he writes a lot of books about Vietnam. I care about that just because my grandfather was in Vietnam and Korea, but that's like a specific, you know, event that I'm tied into, and I listen to the tapes that my grandfather recorded. My grandfather didn't like writing, so he would record audio tapes and send them to my grandmother, and I listened to all those tapes at one point in my life. And then my grandfather's favorite author was Louis L'Amour and W.E.B. Griffin, so obviously I took a liking to both of them because Grandpa was my hero, you know what I mean? So I have read a lot about Vietnam.
I think for me, it's I agree with that. I mean, it's when I grew up, I didn't really pay attention to things. I mean, I grew up during Watergate and the Vietnam War, and you know, I vaguely remember the Kennedy assassination, things like that. But I don't have a sense of what they were or what they were about. And so I've read some history about those things. I've read a lot about the Vietnam War because it was so big during the time I was in high school that, I mean, you couldn't avoid it.
Right.
But yet I didn't pay attention because I was a kid.
School. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. When did you graduate from high school?
75.
75. So you're about the same age as my older sister.
Yeah, I just missed the draft.
Okay. Yeah.
I turned 18 in 1975, and I think they ended the draft around 74. Yeah. And so I you know, I lucky or not, I mean, and they didn't have any selective services requirement for me when I was out.
Yeah.
But I mean, Watergate came and went. It was like, and all my friends are talking about it. I'm like, oh, what is a big deal?
So when, then when Kennedy was assassinated, you were
60,
I was 7, 6 or 7,
63 or 64.
63.
We had a black and white TV.
Uh-huh.
Actually, the more interesting thing at that time were the Beatles on Ed Sullivan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because they had just come to America, right?
Yep. But Kennedy's assassin, and I just remember, whoa, everybody was bummed out. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Why?
You know, and it's funny. So my kids live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we were there a couple of Christmases ago. I said, well, I really want to go down to Daley Plaza. What's that? They had no.
That's where he got shot, right?
No, I know, but they they had no recollection of why that was significant. Or
your kids?
Tanya's kids. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Layla. They had no idea of why that was. They had never personally been down there themselves and stuff.
What do you think I already know what the most significant event that's taken place since any of us have been alive. What are your guys' thoughts? What's the most
9/11?
No doubt.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
without a doubt.
It will be for a long. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
There'll ever be anything.
But not far behind that. Well, I mean, certainly, but I mean the Challenger exploding in '86.
Well, I think second would be COVID. COVID has to be right there.
Yeah,
I mean,
COVID-
dude, it was so crazy that
But you're looking at two types of events. You're looking at an acute event, like the Challenger accident or 9/11, where it's one day or one moment, and it just disrupts the whole historical
Yeah.
timeline. COVID is like this. Can we just not get it over? I mean,
COVID, I think it's more like the Civil War.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sense of, clearly not as significant, but the point is, months and months and months of it's like an economic depression.
Right. And I don't think that we've seen the full ramifications
No, I think
of it
50
yet.
years from now, COVID might be one of the most significant events ever.
Economically, socially.
Socially, medically.
Medi-
you're gonna
yeah.
see you're gonna see some weird stuff, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's going to rock us for a while.
I agree, 100%.
How interesting is that? I mean, if you think about kids that are infants now or toddlers or under 5 years old that went through COVID, what are their offspring going to be like in some manner? I mean, they could be impacted in some manner because of COVID or whatever.
I think the offspring that are going to see it the most are the teenagers that went through it.
Right.
Their kids.
Yeah.
Like these kids had 2 years of just disconnect.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they disconnect and or misconnect because a lot of stuff,
Isolation, weird
isolation,
stuff.
but social media connection was so big during the COVID thing.
Yeah, but that's not real.
Yeah,
The problem is
no,
but it
social
is-
media
it is
not
Kyle.
real.
But that is really an interesting impact, as where you have people that was their life and they've
And their
never left it.
reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
But-
mean, maybe their livelihood or their jobs, or they started working remotely and they don't want to do anything else.
They
but
don't want to go
just-
back to the
No.
office.
Social media is so misleading, and even down to the pictures. Like you'll see a picture of somebody on Instagram and then see them in real life. They don't even look the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or just the way people talk. Oh, my life's so good. On social media, of course, Facebook. They only post mostly the good stuff.
Right.
And then you meet them in real life, and they just lost their job, they got divorced,
And
but
they're
on
basket
Facebook,
cases.
everything's so.
No, but that's
it's not real.
No, right, and that's a weird thing too. They will learn to perform in front of
course.
Right.
on TikTok or in front of a camera or whatever it might be.
Yep.
But in real life, they can't hardly talk to another person.
Right. And
Right.
it's almost like a TV show.
Yep.
Right.
Like, oh, here's this part of my life that's not
it's
real.
Scripted.
And then, it's crazy, man.
Yeah,
Like, and these
yeah.
kids, that's all they knew for a couple years.
Right, and it's gonna, and it's some of the cultural things that that happened during COVID. They're just waving through, they're waving through time, and we're gonna. You're right. I mean, we're gonna
The
feel this thing.
ramifications
Yeah,
are
we're
going to be
gonna
real.
have 10, 15,
And
20 years.
I want to say that I'm like excited to see what happens, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of weird, like I feel bad about that,
Yeah.
but like I also want to see what happens.
I wonder if it's more like ripples in a pond, right? You drop something in a pond, you get some big ripples at first, and then they sort of but they keep going,
Yeah,
right?
who
And they just
knows?
get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Who knows? We can't predict the future. We don't know if any of these vaccinations are going to cause something down the road. We don't know.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't know if the mental health of these kids that were,
Yep.
middle school to, right at that age where you're really trying to find yourself, if that's going to affect them 20 years from
Right.
now.
Or it's really important at a certain point that kids have social interaction with other kids and not their family.
100%.
And
Yeah.
a 2-year gap, what is that going to do?
I think the biggest thing is a loss of accountability. Like, and God bless the teachers, they did their best. But I mean, I had kids that went through COVID, and my kids were always like, I only see my teacher on Zoom once or twice a week. It's like, and so then mom's at work, dad lives over here. Accountability kind of dwindles.
Yeah.
But
and now it's like,
Yeah.
where that's where you learn accountability.
Yeah.
Right. But I remember having conversations with a kindergarten teacher during COVID. And it was like, how does that even work? I
Yeah.
mean, when they're in person and you can grab them, you only have their attention for 5 minutes.
Right.
Maybe. You know, how in the world? Yeah, it was impossible.
Yeah, and I think Kyle's right. I mean, there's a chunk of kids that were in that critical age range, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they transition.
Yep.
I'm really glad that
I had
we
two
reached
of them
some.
in that age
We're,
group.
we're in some relative normality now, and these waves of COVID are slacking off or not peaking as much as they predicted, and that people are back in school where they should be, and we're having social interactions. It doesn't yet still feel like normal. There's something there.
Yeah, there's something amiss.
Yeah, and it's like I think there's always for me this. Okay, am I gonna walk in this place and get COVID?
Right.
Or in
right?
the back of your mind, yeah, you
Yeah.
see somebody with a mask, you're like instantly reminded, like, oh
Right,
crap,
Right. We're still in this
Yeah.
in this predicament, and I mean that's going to be a long time.
The mayor says good morning. The mayor of Union County. That's what we call him.
Samson.
That's Caleb.
Did he start a beer company?
No, that's just his name on Facebook. We call him the mayor of Union County.
Caleb
Oh,
Sampson. You know Caleb.
If I saw him,
Under
I
RB, Caleb Sampson.
And the president of Chamber.
Okay.
Yeah. So we call him the mayor of Union County because he knows everybody. That's what we called him.
Good man to know.
Johnny Ballgame show. So, obviously a county doesn't have a mayor.
No.
He's
But
the mayor.
So you've been doing. You mentioned yesterday when I saw you, you've been doing some research into LeGrand in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, what are some of the interesting things you found?
So being the mayor and being on council for so many years, I thought, it'd be kind of interesting to know who past councilors were.
Yeah.
And then I got interested in the whole idea of, well, they were talking about, somebody was talking about revising the charter recently. And I said, well, what did the charter look like? So I started doing a little bit of research, and online it's pretty easy. And I found a charter from 1885 that was published in a state document, but LeGrand was chartered in 1865. So I got permission, and there's a vault upstairs in City Hall, which was originally built as a post office. So there's a vault up, like one of the banks here. And they gave me permission to go poking around in there, and I found a handwritten copy of the original 1865 charter.
Wow.
And it designates, I was looking at the photo out in your lobby here, and LeGrand was a square mile centered
up there.
at A and First Street.
Yep.
And it was sort of A and First and then north and to not quite to K. It was a square mile. So that was
That's Old Town.
Yeah, that's Old Town.
Yep.
And I have a friend who's doing more research about that. So I found the 1865 charter. I found the 1885, and now I've been just digging slowly into the early 1900s to find more charters. And there are, then there's a lot of discussion in like 1905, 1906 about amending the charter again. And we started out with 6 trustees. They called the council was councilors were called trustees. Started out at 6. In 1885, we dropped to 3, and then we went to 6, and then there's a brief mention of an 8-member council, and
is that what we are now? 8?
no, 7. 7.
An odd number.
And so I'm watching this transition in terms of number of councilors or elected positions. We had elected recorders, city recorder, and like a sheriff, and then then that was changed to be appointed. So there's this dynamic in terms of how the government actually functioned. And what I'm hoping to do is to start to look at how those changes coincided with movements in town. So railroad came through in the late 1800s. Well, we changed the shape of town, and we moved things this way.
Right.
We, population in the Old Town area was 200 to 300, and then by the late 1800s, we were up to 500 or 600, and then after in the early 1900s, it boomed. I believe we like almost quadrupled population to about 2,000. And some of that has to do with the mining that all went on around us. So miners went out to these little towns and did a lot of, temporary towns. And then they was like, okay, wait a minute. I like it here, but there's no mining anymore. What am I going to do? So they moved into these towns like this.
Didn't it have to do with the railroad too?
Oh, yeah.
Like the railroad
Oh,
coming
yeah. And there
through
was
here?
this, I don't quite understand the how this all schemed about, but the original county seat was in Union.
Yeah.
Right? Union
Right,
County?
Right,
Union.
right, yeah.
And somehow or other, and no offense to my friends in Union, LeGrand stole it.
Right.
I mean,
Well, it is probably offense to them.
Yeah, yeah.
We used to be the county seat.
and then what would have happened if Union had been the county seat?
Right.
But part of that was when the railroad came in, the most efficient way to come in was to come in Piles Canyon and stay along the
Stay on,
foothills
yep.
because everything was marshy.
Right. Yeah.
And they couldn't afford to build up a line except where it's coming through by Hot Lake, and all that's built up over marsh.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize how much of LeGrand is on a floodplain.
Oh, that picture that
It's
picture
like
that you've got on the wall over there. It's
crazy.
like they put it in that south side of town because it was out of the marsh.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
and the Oregon Trail
The Oregon Trail came
was
right
was
up.
along the edge of the valley because of the marshiness.
Yeah, it was like all wetland.
It came
Yeah.
right up. It came right up First Street.
Yeah.
Right? Or not First. I gotta remember. So First and Second are north south.
So it
Came up A,
Geckler.
right?
Came up-
Came up Geckler or C and right.
Moved over.
So it came up Foothill Road.
Yep.
Foothill Road, and then up Geckler,
Geckler.
and then right straight up. When Geckler does the turn, it went right up First
Right. That's B.
B. You're right.
Right. And that's B. And then it kind of climbed up on Table Rock.
Yeah.
And then it dropped down at Hillgard. I mean, it's like, why would you do that? Well, you couldn't get up that canyon.
Yeah.
I mean, that canyon was rocky and narrow, and there was no way you're going to put a road in there. So
Yeah.
a lot of the roads went up and out of the valley.
One of the interesting things that I've heard statistically about LeGrand is that the population hasn't changed since 1950. Like we had roughly around the same amount of people in 1950
Yep.
in LeGrand as we do today.
Yep.
73 years later.
One of the documents I found, and it's an annual report produced by the city council, mayor, whatever at the time. Listen, from 1920, and they were talking about water requirements, and there were 3 places they were going to get water. One of them was Beaver Creek,
Yep.
and they wanted to have a water supply for, ready for it, 20,000 people. That was their hope. They were going to have a population of 20,000. We've never had a population of 20,000 within the city limits.
We've never changed. I mean, what's the max it's ever been?
I think-
13,000?
Yeah, I think we're about max now, 13. But the whole county is what, 26?
Right around 25. Yeah, 25. something.
Right. And I moved here in 1990, and I aside from some new buildings here and there, I don't think our population is
It hasn't changed.
much,
It hasn't changed.
much than
I
1,500, 2,000 more since 1990.
That's weird too. But maybe it's just the way where we're located. Like possibly.
I can't help but think, Kyle, that at some point this place is going to pop. I just can't. It's limited in terms of where. I mean, LeGrand's up in this little cove, right?
Mhm.
And there's not a lot of place for us to develop here. I mean, the
valley, though.
the valley's development can go out that way, but with Oregon land use laws, you're pretty restricted about what you can do on land that's zoned a certain way. But I just think, how come we're not growing faster? Because it's such a cool place.
So talk about that for a minute. Oregon land use laws. So then a city cannot just go like, well, we need more area to
Nope.
build houses.
Nope.
Let's just do it here.
I've been here 30 years.
Right. Yeah.
Our city limits have technically not changed very much.
Right.
There've been minor annexations
Right.
as we bring in properties that need sewer and water.
Right.
Our and Mike Boquist is watching this. He'll correct me. I
Yeah.
hope. Our urban growth boundary has not changed at all. So you have the city limits and then you have urban growth boundary, and we could potentially expand out into that urban growth boundary, but our growth isn't high enough to let us do that. You go to places like Portland, Beaverton, or Hillsborough, or Corvallis.
Yeah,
You know,
they're
they've pushed
blowing
their
up.
urban
So,
growth
but
boundary.
their urban, who sets the urban growth boundary? Is that a state thing?
I think that's a state thing, and you have to request permission to expand it.
The reason for that is that this is where we want the population to be.
Yeah.
You just don't want it to be spread out all over everywhere.
Right,
If you're going to have a city,
right,
this is where you're going to have it.
right.
this
And so
area.
you know, you think of some of those properties along not Blackhawk, Fruitdale, the one that goes out
Right.
to, and there's
So the truck stop.
right, and so they say, oh, okay, this is urban residential,
Okay.
and you can't do anything on less than 2 acres.
Okay. So then that's how they limit. So then
Right.
if you go out Hunter Lane,
Yep.
that area. Okay. So that all of that area is restricted by, if you're going to build a house, it has to encompass a certain amount
Yep.
of acreage.
Yep.
Yeah, but the other thing once you get out there though is a lot of that you can't even build on. I mean, the middle of the valley, right down the middle of the valley, is all too wet. You could like down. My aunt and uncle live on Hunter, and they have 200 acres going north. Right. So well, it would be northeast, right, off of Hunter, going down into the
Yep.
valley. The last 50 acres down there is all just like,
Hey,
it's
can't-
still just so wet. You
Yeah.
can't do anything.
And
So
and then
like
you're
that- and that's all the way down the whole middle of the valley, pretty much.
yeah. Then you know, again, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm kind of remembering figures like, you know, agriculture. If something's registered as or zoned as agricultural, you can't build on it unless it's 160 contiguous
Right.
acres. If it's designated timberland, you can't build on it unless it's 240 acres.
Okay.
So you mean once you get out of the valley, and once you get out of LeGrand and Island City proper, and little communities that are, you know, Embler and Union and Cove, a lot of that's ag land, and you're really restricted. There was a ballot measure, late 90s, early 2000s, that allowed some legacy owners to divide their property as they wanted. So if they had owned property before the land use laws went into effect in the
Mhm.
1970s, they weren't restricted to the 160 acres. But those landowners are few and far between.
Yeah, most of them are dead.
Yeah.
So like the nice houses that are kind of up on the hill as you go out toward Hillgard. Okay, that housing development.
Yeah. The Otten track. Yeah.
How did that? Do you remember how that housing development came about?
I don't. Although I think that is, I'd have to look at the.
Is that in city limits?
That's I think I don't know that it's in city limits.
I don't think it is.
And I think it might have been platted out before this 1970 land use.
It's been
laws.
on the plan for a while. but
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's why, you know, people think about Bend and how
Right.
development was down there. It's like, oh, we got to grow like Bend. Well, somebody was smart enough in the early 70s, and they saw the writing on the wall. They went in and platted out a lot of small lots
Oh,
Is
I
it
see.
going west, like past where you
just
get on the
above
freeway?
Gangloff Park. You know, where you're going out, you're going to take the exit onto
Yeah.
the highway.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
got Gangloff on the right, and you're
Which
looking
looks down over the baseball
yeah.
fields and
So
everything.
there's a
Up there on the left.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's in the city limits.
I don't think it is.
because I think my brother lives right up there, and I think he's right on the edge
Yeah.
of the city limits.
Yeah.
Like,
But the bottom line, coming back to our conversation, so then let's say even if we did pop,
Yeah.
where we're going to build houses at? Is that one of the questions that?
Yeah, that's one of the questions.
That's, I mean, there is a designated area out there, kind of where the Pepsi plant is,
Yep.
clear to
Yes.
Flying J area.
Right.
Right,
And that
yeah,
was one of
go
the
on.
okay,
Yeah.
so we have a housing development strategy, and we did housing needs for the city.
Right.
And they identified there's a lot of green space, open space within the city itself to put houses here and there.
Right.
So you know, you could put a number of places in. The big development area that's still part of the city is where the Pepsi plant is.
yeah.
Go over the tracks, and then that property that butts up against the highway and runs all the way out to where Flying J. That area isn't served by sewer or water.
Right.
And that was
Oh,
part of the
that's right, right,
conversation
right.
that we had with the ARPA money.
Right.
Should we spend $1.5 million to put the sewer and
Right.
water out there? If someone walked in the door into the planning department today, and I don't want to speak for the city anymore. Well, maybe I can because I'm not really the city.
Yeah, you can say whatever
but
you
I
want.
could. I mean, if somebody came in and said, "Look, there's already a platted plan for part of that area,"
Mhm.
and developer came in and said, "Look, I own the property. It's platted. What can you do to help us put this facility in there?" I'm sure the city would work on something to find a way to get the sewer and water extended out there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, if there's any time in history for us to grow is now, because of
Yeah.
online jobs. Like people want to come here because they can work online now. They don't
Right.
have to.
But I guess the issue that I have is I mean, let's say that I have a high paying online job. I mean, a lot of these remote jobs, they're well paying. I mean,
Yeah.
and the folks that can move into the area, they move into the area because they want the outdoors, they want the livability of LeGrand and so on and so forth.
The low crime rate.
Yeah.
I'll just
Well, they're not going to want to build between the interstate and the railroad that goes from Pepsi to Flying J.
Yeah.
That's not
Ideal.
that's not what I have, and that's not what they have in their mind.
I know.
So then where are they going to build that's beautiful, that takes in? I mean,
And-
they're going to build out in Cove, and
Right.
that's why.
Right. They'll build out in Cove, or
Right.
they'll build out in Union. I mean, that's the crux of it.
Right.
I mean, we want people to move here. We want to stay vibrant as a community and grow slowly and carefully,
Right.
which is always a good thing. But slowly and carefully, where
Right.
and how do we encourage that kind of development for the kinds of houses that people might want? I don't have that answer. I mean,
It's a big puzzle.
it is a big puzzle. It really is.
Well, man, we've just eaten up an hour, and
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you for jumping on and
Cool.
getting the conversation going. And once you get us out of here, Kyle.
Get us out of here
Yeah.
on this day, which is Pi Day, March 14th, 1880. The Salvation Army of England started work in the U.S. for the very first time at Harry Hill's Variety Theater in New York, which I live in the old Salvation Army building. Do you know that? That building on Fur
Yeah.
is the very first thing it was the Salvation Army.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
1903, the first national bird reservation was established in Sebastian, Florida. 1931, the first theater built for rear movie projection in New York City.
1930.
1931.
Wow.
Yeah, rear movie projection.
Oh.
1950 was the very first time the FBI published a 10 most wanted. So, you know, that list that everybody always
Yeah.
talks about, the 10 most wanted, that started in 1950. 2018, today was the day that all those students walked out. Remember that? It was 5 years ago today, after the mass shootings at schools, all the kids decided they were going to walk out of school. And
I remember that.
Like 80% of the students in the country walked out of class that day. It was crazy. 2019, Google announced its employee Emma Haruka Iwawa broke the world record for calculating pi to 31.4 trillion digits.
Why?
I got
On
that
Pi Day. It was
question.
on Pi Day. She
Why?
used Google Cloud and took it to 31.4 trillion digits.
You know, Kyle, I'll round it to 4 decimal places and I'll be happy.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? That's so great. 31.4 million. Yeah. Number one song in America on this day, 1993, Informer by Snow, which was, with my generation, that song was super popular.
Yeah, I couldn't even.
He's like a
can't even-
reggae.
I couldn't. I don't
it goes,
recognize the title or the artist.
Yeah, it was like huge. It was a huge hit.
What
I
year?
mean, they still play 1993, which
Okay.
was my freshman year in high school. I mean, it still play. It comes on. Anybody my age sings it. Yeah, it's crazy. And then quote for the day, Mark Twain: "The two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why." One more
Mm.
time. The two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why.
Boy, I'm still working on the find out why.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I wish my parents were around to
Yeah,
tell me
that's
now.
kind of a lifelong
Yeah.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe you find out why when you're on your deathbed.
maybe so.
You
Maybe
know,
there's some weird revelation that
I
happens.
learned something the other day. You start your life with an inhale, with an exhale. Wait a second, with an inhale.
Yeah.
And you cry, and you end it with an exhale. How about that?
Makes sense. Yeah, I don't think you're sucking one in before you hit crow.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
Well, thanks, Steve, for jumping in.
you're
Thank you,
very
Steve.
welcome.
Yeah,
I
appreciate
appreciate it. Had fun.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Eastern Oregon.
Anything special going on this week? I'm trying to think.
No, but I think that the next county commissioner is up on Thursday. Yeah,
Who is it, Paul?
it's Paul. Thank
Paul.
you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, Paul will be with us here. Paul Anders will be here with us on Thursday. So thanks a bunch. See you
See you
soon.
then.